Tonight we have the pleasure and the honor to have with us in this program of field studies a leading figure in the world of intelligence and counterintelligence, David Major. He today leads a series of programs, one of which I'm a professor at, the Counterintelligence Center, but he will tell us more about the other projects. Mr. Major has been an official under the Reagan administration in the Reagan White House. He has been also active in the FBI and other agencies. We had the pleasure of having a comprehensive lecture by Mr. Major on espionage, counter-espionage, terrorism and counterterrorism. So thank you so much for coming today. Could you tell us in a very summarized way what are the projects? I mean, in less than a minute, how can you describe the project that you lead?
The Center for Counterintelligence and Security Studies is a center of excellence that tries to provide training to the government and the private sector on the strategic importance of intelligence and security. So what we do is we track around the world every single case that takes place with espionage, counterintelligence, intelligence, and cyber attacks, so that we can give an empirical answer to how big is this problem. That's what we do. We do this using also our database called Spypedia, which we track this material every single day.
Can you tell us more about Spypedia, because this is something that very many Americans and also students from Turkey are interested in a nutshell?
Well, we wanted a single place that anybody, any student, anybody could go and look at and get real answers. And so it's not a cause house. What it is it's a research project, took 15 years to build, and we have in that the data of every single espionage case, terrorist attacks since 9/11 in the United States, every arrest made around the world, every cyber attack, and we do an analysis of that. Like, for example, the chart here is how many Chinese cases there have been, that we can look at using hard facts. So it is a great resource for educators, for corporations, for government agencies, and people from all those walks are members of this database.
Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight, and now let's see if students are ready to ask any question.
You mentioned that the government can listen from a Skype to a terrorist, but how can the government know who is a terrorist? On what criteria?
Well, that's a very, very good question.
Yeah.
And investigative techniques require you to have linkage. In other words, they just can't go in and look at someone who says, let's listen to this conversation. The person they might listen to is somebody that they have linkage someplace else. For example, they may be in Afghanistan, they may do a raid on a place that was known by the Taliban, they may pick up a telephone number there or something from their electronics that indicates that this is a telephone number here in the United States. So then they would track it back and say, well, who is this person that this person called from Afghanistan? Now that person is an individual of interest. Not proving that they're terrorists, but they have links with known terrorists, and so now you would investigate that person. The person may turn out to be perfectly fine and they're not a terrorist, but it's a link to that individual. So it makes sense to investigate them, who they are, where they came from, what are they doing. And if part of that leads to, are they on the internet, what are they posting, what are their blogs, and by the way, might they be using the Skype to communicate, all these are steps you'd go through to begin to investigate that person. But you wouldn't just start out in one day and say, well, let's look at Mike today, and just look at him. You would never do that. Even when I was in the FBI, I could never investigate anybody just on a whim. I had to have some predication. And that's true in terrorism and counterintelligence. It's got to be predicated by some other fact that links it to what I'm looking for.
Just a quick question. Is that you with President Reagan here?
It is. A younger me.
A younger you.
Younger me.
So you served in the White House?
Yes, I was in the National Security Council as the Director of Counterintelligence and Intelligence Programs. And I handled policy issues related to intelligence and counterintelligence. So I understood from a very intimate standpoint the decision-making process. And I can tell you we write all kinds of papers and requirements that we go through that are sent to everyone in the government. Here's what you can do, here's what you can't do. In the FBI we have a thing called the Attorney General Guidelines, and they laid out very specifically when you can open up a case, what you can do, whose approval you have to get, when you have to go to your lawyers to do it. So it's not just haphazard, it's very, very specific, and they're trained when they can do it and when they cannot. And NSA does the same thing. So there's a protocol that's been reviewed by lots of people, and if anybody violates that protocol, they can be disciplined and or fired.
Thank you so much for the question.